Greetings everyone, welcome to my far too long Dark Souls 3 boss guide for the Nameless King. But if you really want to punch this guy in the face, or just learn more about him, I can probably help you. But let's start. The Nameless King is an optional boss from Dark Souls 3 and you find him in an area called Archdragon Peak, which is also an optional area. To get there, and this is obviously a spoiler, you have to find a specific gesture. And you will get it after beating Osiris, the Consumed King. With this you have to go to Irithyll Dungeon. There is a specific place where you see carpets on the ground and petrified dragons meditating there. If you perform the gesture there, you will see a small cutscene and then get teleported. After that, your character awakes at Archdragon Peak. The area is quite big and you have to explore pretty much everything to fight the Nameless King. In addition, there's another boss you have to fight first, the Ancient Wyvern. Then, later into the level, you have to ring a giant bell to make the Nameless King appear. Don't confuse it with a small bell where you fought the first boss. The next segment of this video will be about the preparation for the boss fight. Your first concern should be the damage output of your weapon. You will find many advanced upgrade materials in Archdragon Peak, for example Titanite chunks or even a Titanite slab. If you collected most of the available Titanite chunks to this point, you should be able to upgrade your weapon to +10. You can find the Titanite slab pretty close to the bonfire for the Nameless King. And also an old friend. When it comes to weapon buffs and elemental damage, it is a little bit complicated. For the first phase, lightning damage would be your best choice. But for the second phase, fire damage, dark damage and especially bleeding damage are your best choices. And also magic works fine. But don't get me wrong, you can use any damage type you want and still beat him. Another really helpful point if you're struggling a lot with this fight is your amount of HP and your vigor value, because this boss has a very high damage output and surviving additional hits helps a lot beating him. On the other side, stamina management isn't as important as it was in previous titles, since the stamina costs in Dark Souls 3 are that low. But to avoid a misunderstanding, it is not as important but still necessary, especially if you're using a shield. Also, increasing your endurance attribute for more stamina can be very helpful for shields. And with this we are at my next point, shields. Usually I don't recommend using them, but in this fight it can actually help, especially in the second phase. Obviously it should block lightning and have a high stability value, as the Lothric Knight shield. But let's jump back to weapons for a few moments. As you have probably noticed in Dark Souls 3, katana, curved swords and especially straight swords, all of them with bleeding effects, are incredibly powerful. So I recommend using them especially for the second phase, because from my perspective faster weapons make this fight easier, even though a long weapon can be helpful in the first phase. If it comes down to your other equipment, you are pretty free. You should maximize your damage output and maybe do something for your stamina regeneration. And I think that's it for the preparation segment of this video. So let's move on to something more interesting, the actual fight. The fight itself is divided in two phases. Each of them have their own health bar. And the second phase is also divided into two parts where the boss gets new attacks. But let's start with the first phase. The first phase is not that hard and can be done very quickly if you know what you are doing. It is also possible to manipulate the boss or, let's say, bait out specific attacks that help you a lot. The first thing you should keep in mind is that this boss is a lot easier, and I'm only talking about the first phase, if you not lock him in, only occasionally. The second thing is, and this is true for both phases, that if you hit him enough times and deal enough damage, he will stagger and you will be able to perform a special attack that is pretty much like a backstab or a riposte. But keep in mind for the first phase that only hits to the dragon's head will trigger the special attack. He also receives the most damage there. And this leads us to an interesting point about the dragon fight. He has different hitboxes where you deal different amounts of damage. That means highest damage head, normal damage neck and wings, lowest damage legs. So you want to attack his head anyway. And with all this knowledge we come to the quick kill strategy for the first phase. It includes baiting specific attacks, or you could say manipulating the boss through positioning to do specific attack patterns. As you can hopefully see in the footage, the boss always starts the fight with the same attack patterns. This happens not by accident, you can actually repeat it very reliably. It won't work every time, but you can get a pretty high number. And with all of this, you can create a setup where you can kill the first phase of the boss in about 15 to let's say 30 seconds. If you have the right amount of damage, that is. But how does this work? The hardest part is actually the beginning. When you enter the boss arena, you have to run in time to a specific position in front of the dragon. It is not too close, but also not too far away. It's easy to miss, and even if you hit it, you only have a very high chance of him doing the right attack. If it works out, he will make a charge attack at you that is very easy to dodge, but also easy to recognize. As soon as you see the right attack, you want to start moving backwards, and also your dodge roll should be directed backwards, as you can see in the video. This is important for the follow-up attacks. Then, right after attacking and you are to its left, you can start attacking the dragon's head. But be careful, you want to stay in front of the dragon while you are attacking him, and as his head moves away from you, his hitbox gets messy and sometimes your first hit won't connect, so you probably have to get even closer or wait for a moment. Also, if the head is moving, as you can see in the footage, it is an indicator that your setup is working as intended. Should his head not move, he will attack you right away, so be ready to dodge, and the fight will go different from here. This means something went wrong and you have to fight him normally. But back to our setup. If everything is going as planned, you should be able to attack him 3 times with a faster weapon or 2 times with a slower weapon. If everything goes according to plan, the next thing the dragon will do is changing his position. Before he does this, the dragon will move down his head a bit, and this is a very good opportunity to get another hit in, at least if you have a semi-fast weapon. After that, the dragon will fly over your character and land somewhere behind you. If you now position correctly and stay in front of the dragon with a certain distance, as you can see in the footage, the Nameless King on the dragon will start a lightning attack. It has a very long recovery animation, and if you are able to dodge this attack completely, which is actually very hard, then you can land at least 2 or even 3 hits on him. And if your weapon is almost maxed out, this should bring the dragon into his stagger animation and allow you to perform a special attack. As a side note, the difficulty of dodging this attack is that it has 2 delayed damage procs and you have to iframe them both, so you have to dodge very late. The Credits.min ring can be very helpful here. But let's go back to where we were. Ideally, the dragon will just die after the special attack and the second phase will start instantly. Should your damage be not enough to kill him there, you have one more opportunity to attack him when he stands up. If you kill him there, you have the advantage that he has a small death animation that allows you to buff your weapon for the next phase. If you need an additional attack or want to skip the death animation, you can also hit him with a heavy attack when the dragon is in a stagger animation. Then wait till you are almost back to your neutral position and perform the special attack. It works like a riposte or backstep by pressing the normal attack button. As you can see in the footage, you can perform it from almost everywhere close to the dragon. It will just teleport you to the right position. As a side note, if you are using a very strong bleeding weapon, you could also consider just attacking him normally and not using the special attack. And that's it for the quick kill. But what do you do when you can't pull it off, which can happen sometimes? In the next section I will go through every attack of the first phase and explain what you can do about it. Let's start with the attacks we already know. First we have the attack where the dragon flies up and charges at you. It is very easy to dodge and highly punishable. The tracking isn't really good on this attack and that is why it's easy to dodge, but should it hit you it will deal a lot of damage. But if you go for the punish, keep in mind that it's very likely that the boss will add an attack to it and it comes very fast. The next thing on my list would be his position swap where he flies up and lands somewhere behind you. As already mentioned, before he starts flying, he moves his head down a bit, which is a very good opportunity to get a hit in. Else there's not much to say, only that after it is very likely, at least when you keep your distance and don't move too much, that he will charge up his lightning attack. And this is the next attack we are talking about. It is very easy to recognize and has a very long wind-up animation, and you can also avoid it easily by just running under the dragon. But if you want to dodge this attack with your iframes, it is a little bit more difficult, because this attack has 2 damage procs and the second one is a little bit delayed, so you have to iframe them both, and that means you have to roll very late. The Credits ring that gives your roll more iframes can be very helpful here. As a side note, the second damage proc doesn't deal as much damage as the first, so should you get hit, try to get hit by the second one. Also, the second one doesn't knock you down. You could also just block the attack with your shield, but it will cost a lot of stamina and therefore reduce your damage output. Also, I recommend locking in if you block this attack. But overall, I highly recommend learning dodging this attack because it is so punishable. Keep in mind that the audio cue is a very good indicator for the dodge timing. The next attack we are looking at is his fire from above attack. The most important thing here is to recognize it early. You will see that he moves up and moves his tail down a bit. This is a very good visual indicator to recognize it. To dodge this attack, you have to move backwards from him. Should you get hit by the fire, you will get knocked down. Always spam the roll button when you stand up to get those extra iframes. Those iframes will always prevent you from getting hit a second time by the fire and most likely kill you. And as you hopefully can see in the footage, the hitbox of the fire is very strange, especially if you want to punish this attack. And yes, this attack is punishable. To punish this attack, you have to run into the fire at a certain point. If you time it correctly, the messy hitbox of it seems to vanish, even though you still see fire on the screen. With this, you should be able to reach the dragon in time and hit him once. Speaking of fire, the dragon also has a fire breath. This attack should be your favorite attack because it allows you to deal a very high amount of damage to the dragon. This attack is easy to recognize, and if you see it, just run to the neck of the dragon and start attacking. But be careful, there's a probability of the Nameless King shooting a lightning spear at you. It doesn't deal much damage, but if you want to dodge it, you have to roll it. But since it has a bad tracking after rolling, it is very easy to dodge. Also keep in mind that you can hit his head from this position, but if you get too close to the mouth, you will get hit by the fire, even though you stand to the side of it. Again, the hitbox is a little bit messy here. Another flying attack which is really interesting is his wind attack. It is actually very rare, so you don't have to bother too much about it. Since he's also flying up, it can be easily confused with a fire attack, but the difference is that he's moving away from you when he's doing this attack and doesn't fly that high. To dodge it, I usually just start spamming rolls into the direction of the dragon. If the borders of the level don't block his movement backwards, the hitbox of the wind shockwave will be created behind your character and miss you completely. If his movement gets blocked, the hitbox gets messy, and even though you don't see the particle effect of the shockwave, you will get hit. Then there's another flying attack where the dragon flies up and the Nameless King shoots a lightning spear at you. After that, the dragon will nosedive and try to land on you. If you want to dodge the lightning spear, you can just lock in the dragon's head and run into the direction the dragon is flying. If you do it correctly and your angle is right, the lightning spear will pretty much always miss you. Or you can just dodge it with a roll. Dodging the nosedive is pretty easy. You maybe have to dodge a little bit earlier than you would expect. Also keep in mind that if the movement of the dragon while he's flying gets blocked by the borders of the level, that the angle and the timing can change a bit. After that, the dragon will land and move his head down for a while, which is a very good opportunity to get some hits in. But you have to be very fast. It helps a lot if you roll his nosedive into the direction he's flying. The next attacks I want to cover are his spear attacks. There's a delayed one where he smashes his spear on the ground, pretty similar to the lightning charge attack, just without lightning. It is very punishable, but be careful, he can add one spear swing to it. Also, the dragon jumps back a bit when he uses this attack, so it can hit you below the dragon. There's also a thrust attack that is pretty similar, but a lot faster. You have to be very careful if he does this attack. It is as punishable as the other attack, but the Nameless King can add a swing attack to it too. Speaking of swing attacks, he can swing once or twice, so he can chain them together. He can also add a third attack to it, which is again the attack where he smashes his spear on the ground. Interestingly, he can add his charged lightning attack to it too, but this is also true for the thrust attack and the spear smash, but it's rare and seems more likely if you got hit. And this is phase 1. After it, a cutscene starts and the Nameless King will now fight you on the ground, without his dragon, but gets a new life bar. And with this, the second phase begins. First of all, in contrast to the first phase, I recommend locking him in. And then, when the fight starts, he has only 3 options. Most of the time, all 3 occur randomly, one after another. First, he shoots a narrow shockwave that travels very fast in your direction. Second, he shoots a cone-like shockwave that travels slowly in your direction. Third, he does nothing and just slowly walks in your direction until you are close enough. After he used his fast shockwave attack, there is usually time to buff your weapon. If you now approach him from a certain distance, it is most likely that he will start a charge attack at you. And if you get your timing right, that is highly punishable. After this, it is very random what happens next, until you reach the second phase of the second phase. But we aren't there yet, so let's start with something different. My first piece of advice would be to be very patiently in this fight. If you have seen my Fume Knight guide, pretty much the same rule applies. If you have an opportunity to attack him, just attack him once. But of course, he has some attacks with high enough recovery times that allow you to attack twice too. Another attack I want to mention, really short, are his very fast vertical swing attacks. Theoretically, you can punish them, but I recommend to just stay away from them, because they're very fast, and if your timing is not well or your weapon is too slow, you will easily get hit by follow-ups. And this leads to a playstyle where you try to keep a certain distance, so you don't run into those attacks. So my advice, keep your distance until you reach the second phase of the second phase. Here you want to get a bit closer. See the section where I go through all phase 2 attacks for more information. But let's move back to why you have to be patient. One reason is that the Nameless King, as a Fume Knight in Dark Souls 2, can add attacks to a lot of his moves that can catch you off guard when you are attacking for too long. Another reason is that he has some very fast attacks in combination with high damage, and the last reason is that he is not really using a stamina system or has notable cooldowns on his attacks himself. But that is, from my perspective, sadly true for a lot of enemies in Dark Souls 3, but also occurred in the older titles too. But there, FromSoft made a better job at hiding it by smartly using cooldowns on attacks. But let's move on to his attacks and what you can do about them. Let's start with his grab attack. Here he charges his spear with lightning and rushes in your direction. If he hits you, he will do a special grab animation that is very reminiscent of empowered Ornstein's grab attack from the first Dark Souls. It is very punishable. What you do is just roll into it and iframe the attack. The timing is somewhat forgiving, but it still needs to get used to it, so I recommend practicing it a bit, because you will see it quite often and it's very safe to punish. The next attack is his slow flying charge attack, where he slowly flies into the air, waits for a while and then suddenly charges at you. This attack has insanely bad tracking. I would say it is almost impossible to get hit by it if you just roll. And that makes it very punishable. You can roll very early and keep moving left, it won't hit you. If he is recovering, you can get several hits in depending on your weapon. But be careful, he can add 1 or more spear thrust attacks to it, which are also punishable. So if you see this attack, you should be happy. But keep in mind, the Nameless King only considers this attack if you have a certain distance to him. As a side note, you can also avoid this attack by just walking under the Nameless King when he's flying. Then he has another flying charge attack that is very fast. Here he dashes to the side and then charges very fast at you. If he is too close to you, this attack can remove your camera lock, which can be annoying and force you to dodge it blindly. If this happens, you have to wait for a little bit less than a second and then dodge. But if you see it, you can dodge right into it and iframe the attack. The timing is not that hard. Roll when he starts moving in your direction. Of course, the timing can be depending on his travel distance, but that is true for pretty much all dash or charge attacks. The recovery time is very high and you can punish it hard. Even if you had to dodge this attack blindly, you can still run to him and get at least one hit in. But be careful, he can add a spear thrust attack to it, like with the other charge attack. Let's stay with very punishable attacks. As mentioned before, his spear thrust attack is very punishable. Usually he does 1 or 2 attacks prior to it before he starts with this attack. That means you will most likely only see it as part of a combo. After a spear thrust attack, he has the option to add 1 or 2 additional spear thrust attacks to it. In rare cases even 3. They are very easy to dodge and you can avoid them by just circling around him if you are very close. But you have to start circling early. If you are not sure, just roll it, and if you had to roll the first attack, you can in most cases dodge the next thrust attacks easily by just circling and attacking. Never roll straight back, the attack can easily hit you when you're getting up. Also, for every follow-up spear thrust, his range increases, so don't underestimate his range if you walk backwards. If you are not close to him and you see this attack, I recommend just rolling into it and iframe the spear attack. The timing is pretty similar to the dash part of his grab attack. After or even while he is attacking you, you can just hit him. It is very punishable and has a long recovery time. If he finishes his attack, I can usually get 2 or 3 hits in with the katana if I dodge early. If you're using a very slow weapon, be a little bit more careful. As an interesting side note, you can actually duck under his spear thrust. So if you are using, for example, the heavy attack of the Zweihander, you won't get hit by the spear thrust if you time it right. Then he has 2 other attacks where he charges at you but stays on the ground. They are easy to distinguish from each other. The first one is a little bit faster. Here he dashes through you, turns around and immediately starts an attack. Even though it is possible to punish this attack, I don't recommend doing so, because he's able to add very fast attacks to it that will most likely hit you. Should your distance be great enough, you can just roll back so he can't dash through you and you position directly behind the Nameless King. In this case it is safe to hit him once, but that doesn't happen very often. Also be careful, if your angle is wrong he will try to hit you. If you really want to punish it, you have to dodge through his follow-up attack. Wait for a probably second attack that you have to dodge too and then hit him fast. It is very unsafe because it is likely that he just starts another fast attack. If you want to be safe, just block or dodge this attack and then move away from the follow-up attack and you will be fine. The other charge attack also includes charging up his spear with lightning a little bit and then dash at you. Even though punishing this attack is actually safe, it is a little bit tricky to do so. If you are not too far away, he will usually dash right through you and stop behind you. That will also remove the camera lock. To punish it, you have to roll into the direction he dashes, so you end up being directly behind him, or run immediately in the right direction after you dodged his attack. But this is a little bit difficult, so I recommend to be better safe but sorry. Also, hit him only once or maybe with a very fast weapon twice. The next attack is his big overhead swing. Not much to say about it, but it is very safe to punish it. If you can just roll right into him and iframe this attack, just hit him once or twice and you're good. Should you have dodged him backwards, it is still possible to punish him with a running attack if you hurry. And I think it never happened to me that he added an additional attack to it, so it is very safe to punish. He also has a vertical swing attack that is very slow and has very high range. You can punish that too, but from my perspective he can add very fast attacks to it, so it is not really safe to punish this one. He also has a lot of those wind shockwave attacks. 2 as mentioned before for high range and also 2 or 3 for close range. The high or long range attacks are actually punishable. If you're running right straight to the Nameless King from a certain distance and he does one of those attacks, you can just dodge right through them and then when you arrive in time, hit him. When it comes to the close range versions, he often enters a phase where he starts spamming them for a while. Just dodge them, don't punish, because he has a lot of follow-up options for those attacks. For one of them, he starts charging his spear with wind. I find it easier to dodge it to the left. The other versions I usually dodge to the right. But you can do whatever works best for you. And with all this knowledge, you should be able to enter the second phase of the second phase. It starts when he is between 60 and 50% of his HP. In this phase he will get 4 additional attacks. But before this happens and your fight went very well and you were able to attack him constantly, he should collapse and allow you to perform a special attack. If you are playing a very strong bleeding build, I recommend just hitting him and not performing the special attack. Else, try to hit him once or twice from the side or use a strong attack and then perform the special attack to maximize your damage. But keep an eye at your stamina bar, because the special attack will drain quite a lot of it. Because you want to hit the Nameless King when he's standing up again. In an ideal scenario, the second phase will start right after the special attack, because you brought him down to half HP. The start of the second phase will allow us to deal a lot of damage to him, because we know his next 2 attacks. The second phase starts always the same, and this is independent from the special attack, and also always true whenever he reaches half HP. As an interesting side note, if you stagger the Nameless King during one of his 2 lightning attacks at the start of the second phase of the second phase, so he can complete the attack, he will start the interrupted attack again after he stands up. The first attack in the second phase is always the attack where he holds up his spear, charges it with lightning and smashes it on the ground. It has very high range and okayish tracking, but deals damage in a small area. After a short while it procs again and lightning covers some area on the ground, starting from where the spear hits the ground, dealing a small amount of damage. But if you are close to the Nameless King, you can run to him and circle to the right. If you cross a 90-degree angle, it won't hit. You don't even need to dodge. Here you start attacking, and it will most likely also help you to not get hit by the lightning proc. You do this every time you see this attack, not only at the beginning of the second phase, so you don't want to get too far away from him. The attack that comes next, but only at the start of the second phase, else they can appear separated, is another lightning attack. Here he holds the spear in front of him and charges it slowly. When he does this, just keep attacking him always and listen to the audio. When the charging sound is gone, wait for half a second and just roll. Also have stamina left for this roll. If you're not confident in dodging this attack, you can simply block it with a shield, but it will drain pretty much all your stamina. After the Nameless King has charged his spear, a lightning bolt from the sky will always land on your position. If you roll in time, it will miss. Then, after dodging it, you can keep attacking him, but don't be overconfident should the fight continue normally. Just 1 or 2 attacks. In the ideal scenario, he will stagger and you can again deal quite a lot of damage to him. Normally, it should be enough to kill him, but in case the fight continues, always try to get as much damage as possible here. That is, during charging his spear and after you dodged the lightning. Should the fight continue, he has 2 additional attacks that are very similar to each other. One is a stomp on the ground that deals lightning damage in an area. The other is throwing a lightning spear on the ground in front of him that does pretty much the same. You can iframe both, even though I find that a bit tricky sometimes. The best way is to recognize them early and get some distance. But again, you want to be very close to punish the other 2 lightning attacks. If you dodge them or they miss you, you can punish the lightning spear attack with 1 hit, but not the stomp. And with all this knowledge, you should be able to beat him. This guide was very long, also took a lot of time. I had to record a lot of text with several takes, record tons of footage. Hope it helps and you enjoyed it. If you liked it, consider subscribing or following me on Twitter for informations about new videos and guides. Thank you for watching and goodbye. Just as a little disclaimer, the footage was recorded from the PC version of Dark Souls 3 between May and July of 2016, so things could change. You can find the exact version number down in the description.